Did you ever think that if you could just earn more money, you would feel more secure? In today's video, I'm going to be talking about financial preparedness and what does that look like. I want you to think about this. Financial security doesn't come from earning more. It comes from building income that doesn't depend entirely on your paycheck. Have you ever looked at someone who is making six figures of income and thought they've got it made? The truth is, you've probably met people who are making only $60,000 and they seem more financially secure than the people who are making $250,000. And have you ever asked yourself, why is that? Why does that seem like they seem more secure having less money than someone that actually makes more money? What's really behind that is income and financial security are not the same thing. Today, I'm going to challenge one of the biggest beliefs we've been taught about money. You've been on the path where you've worked hard, you went to school, you've built your career, and every promotion that you got came with more responsibility, but every raise that you got seemed to simply disappear. And not because you're irresponsible, life just got bigger. So when we start to make more money, what happens is we go out and we get the bigger house, the newer cars. We end up helping our kids, or maybe we're helping our parents. We have vacations, college expenses, college tuition, and then unexpected expenses. And before we know it, the paycheck gets bigger, but so does everything attached to it. Have confused high income or high earnings to feeling financially secure. We assume a higher income is equal to more security. And a paycheck is wonderful, but it only exists while we are working. So what happens if you want to slow down or you want to change careers? I know when I changed careers, I went from a traveling management consultant to overnight becoming a self-employed real estate investor. So my income, my paycheck wasn't steady anymore because I had to make the transition into being a real estate investor. And I did not get paid overnight to do that. But when we have a paycheck, we also have to plan our time off. A lot of us, as we work, we earn PTO or vacation time or sick days. We get those paid time off days. But what happens when you've exceeded your vacation, or maybe you want to take a longer vacation? I know in some companies you can do that. So if you have 2 weeks vacation, but you really want to be gone 3 weeks, you're going to be paid for 2 weeks, but 1 week you will have to take it without pay. And what if your company restructures? They downsize, you're out of a position, or you've come back from maternity leave only to find out that you're put in a different department with maybe more responsibilities or sometimes less pay. What if you start experiencing burnout? You're taking care of kids, you're taking care of parents. You don't feel like you have any time for yourself and you're having burnout from just going, going, going. And even though you get that paycheck, can you plan a retreat for yourself? So recently, that's exactly what I did. I was able to just take a long weekend and I went to a retreat because I was feeling extreme burnout and I love what I do. I remember though those days when I had my job and I was taking care of my daughter and just trying to take care of life as a single mom. And when push came to shove, I could not take time off without losing pay, and I needed the pay to continue to pay my bills. I did not have financial security. I did have a nice paycheck, but I wasn't financially secure. At that point in time, my lifestyle, the way I was choosing to live, was dependent on one paycheck, my paycheck. So having a paycheck really isn't very secure because, again, just because you have a paycheck doesn't make you financially secure, because as you make more money, then we have a tendency to buy bigger things. Life gets bigger. So have you ever asked yourself, if you are dependent on one paycheck, do you feel financially secure? Over the past 20 years, I have worked with women and men just like you. They've been business owners, they've been executives, school teacher, healthcare workers, just about from every field that you could think about. I've worked with people who are stay-at-home moms. I've worked with widows who need to look at a second source of income. It really doesn't matter what point in your life you are, if you don't feel financially secure, it's never too late to start taking steps to make sure that you are financially secure. Some of the folks that I've worked with were very high net worth income, but they worked for a company and they were dependent on whether or not that company stayed in business. Or a teacher who has additional time in the summer to actually work on taking steps so that they can bolster their income, so that they can create a second source of income through real estate investing. Healthcare professionals are actually probably the biggest group of people that I've worked with over the last few years because there was a lot of burnout due to COVID. And, healthcare professionals, first responders, they're feeling burnout as they did during the COVID years. Then they have the ability to not just rely on one source of income and have more flexibility so that they can avoid burnout. They can still continue to do their profession because most of first responders and teachers and healthcare professionals, they love what they do. So it's not that they want to quit their job, and that's not what I even teach. I talk about how you don't have to rely on one source of income, that you can take actions today that will help your income so that if something does happen, or if you choose to make something happen to that one source of income, that you have something to fall back on. But all of the people that I have worked with over the past 20 some years, the one thing that they had in common, regardless of their level of income, they all felt trapped. They were in the paycheck trap because if that paycheck went away tomorrow, they all had to ask themselves the question, their lifestyle today. How would they continue to pay their bills, their mortgages, their rent? So that was the one thing, whether they were high earners or middle income or even lower waged individuals, they all shared that one trait that they did not feel financially secure, even though they did have a source of income coming in. The source of income, though, was a paycheck. The other thing that I have noticed over the years is that it doesn't necessarily equate your paycheck doesn't equate to financial security. Some of the people that have not made, like I've met people that have made, over $250,000 and people who've met less than $60,000. And what always amazed me was the people who made less sometimes felt more financially secure because they were already taking actions to build assets. They were building assets that were making them money even while they slept. What I've seen and what I've learned over the years is that income and security are two different things. So income is what we have coming in, what we budget for vacations, for paying our bills. But the security comes from knowing that we are not relying on just one source of income to feel financially secure. So it's about keeping the perspective of money coming in and money going out. And is the source of your money coming in coming from one source, or do you have multiple sources that are making you money while you sleep? For me, real estate investing became that vehicle give me the security that I was looking for. So the paycheck wasn't giving me security. Yes, it gave me money and it gave me a nice life, but it didn't give me security because if something happened tomorrow to my job or my paycheck went away, then I wasn't feeling secure. I've mentioned this before is how I didn't know anything about real estate investing. And I spent many a night in my younger years just worrying about how am I going to pay for my daughter's college, or how am I going to pay for my daughter's dance, or how am I going to take extended vacations? And did I even have the time? If something happened to my daughter and I needed to take off time from work, how would I be paid? There were so many things that went through my head that I worried that my worrying was really needlessly because I wasn't keeping in perspective that I needed to actually create security and not rely on a paycheck to do that for me. And yes, I had a 401k, but the 401k, I wasn't old enough to tap into that. If I ended up, let's say I had an emergency and I had to tap into that, I would have to pay penalties and all that kind of stuff. So that wasn't really a source of income that would give me security. When I started looking around at real estate investing, what I realized was that the people who earned less with a paycheck actually seemed to be the people who worried the least amount. So they weren't always the people who earned more money. They just had assets that they were relying on beyond their paycheck. They became paycheck optional. While they were building their assets, they became people who decided, I want to continue working or I don't want to continue. They were able to have that option whether they wanted to keep their day job. And the only reason they were able to do that was because they had built assets from real estate investing. And the only reason I was able to do that was because I built assets that made me money while I slept. They also gave me financial security. And I did not start investing when I was in my 20s. I wasn't born into a real estate investing family, and I've made mistakes as I learned how to create those real estate assets that make me money. But the one lesson that I learned that changed how I looked at money forever, I stopped asking the question, how can I earn more income? And instead, now I ask the question, how can I depend less on my paycheck? And that one question changed everything for me. So I would like to invite you to ask yourself this question. If your paycheck stopped tomorrow, how long would your current lifestyle last? 2 months? 6 months? 1 year, 5 years? And I'm not trying to scare anybody. I just think that it gives you clarity when you think about, okay, I have one source of income, or maybe you have two, maybe you're a two-income family. My daughter had to ask that very question when she elected to stay home with her two children. She wanted to homeschool them. She wanted to raise her two babies, my little grandbabies. And she had to ask herself that question. And yes, in the beginning, they had to make some sacrifices before they were able to build up their additional asset monies from real estate investing. It isn't about fear. It's about having options. And it's not about earning more. It's about creating more options. And that's exactly why I created a free masterclass that's only 14 minutes long. And it's not about convincing you to become a real estate investor. It's about showing you a different way to think about building income beyond your paycheck. If today's conversation and this video made you stop and think, I think you'll really like the masterclass. You can find the link below to check it out.